Jewel, let's start.
Good morning, everyone. We are going to start the meeting, and I'm going to read a quick statement, and then I'll turn it back over to the chairman, and he'll introduce legal counsel for the statement on how we're going to run the meeting according to the governor's orders. Please keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. The technical support team may proactively mute participants if the microphone is picking up background noise. And board members should check to make sure the microphone is not muted before you speak. You may text me at any time during the meeting if you need technical support. And we have IT. They'll call your cell phone to assist you. My number is 540-336-3948. And now I turn it back over to the chairman to open the meeting and introduce legal counsel. Mr. Kobles.
Thanks, Jewel. Welcome, everybody. It's been quite an experience the past 2 months. I'm glad we're able to get together. We have a full agenda today, so I'm going to turn this over to our glorious legal counsel, Jonathan Rack.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's good to see you all after a long absence. Got a short statement to read. In accordance with the governor's state of emergency declaration and the executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors Continuity Ordinance and the General Assembly 2020 Budget Amendments numbers 28 and 137. Loudoun Water will meet today in an electronic meeting without having members physically assembled. In compliance with these special procedures, only action items necessary to continue operations of Loudoun Water and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities will be discussed during today's meeting. Reports and other meeting information are available on board docs, but won't be separately presented today. Public notice and meeting access information was provided on the Loudoun Water website. And in accordance with the requirements, a recording of the meeting will be available in board docs following the meeting. I'll be available during the meeting as you need me to answer any questions about procedures, and I'll turn it back over to the chairman.
Thanks, Jonathan. Marty, don't forget to mute your thing there. It's not muted, if you can hear me. So anyway,
is now joining.
So anyway, I'm just reminding everybody that to unmute when you try to speak. Maybe Jewel can like point to her mouth or something like that if somebody forgets to unmute. I'm reading here, which I'm just finding out that we don't have to vote on whether something's going to consent. I assume that everything is going to action, and I guess that's because of, actually, I have no reason understanding why that needs to happen, but I guess it does. Also, we will see the presentation on our screen. Is that correct, Jewel? Nod? Yeah, okay. So that would be good. Well, it's good to be back, like I said before, and let's see, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion, I make the motion.
Jim, I assume you're going to second because you're on mute.
Yes, I second that motion.
Is Angeline on? Anybody see? She's on, okay. Just want to make sure. So, well, and if everybody, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I assume this is the way we're supposed to do it, right? Right, Jewel?
Actually, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think because of the remote participation, you probably ought to take the votes with a quick roll call, which Jewel can read.
All right, that sounds easier. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Kobles,
Aye.
Mr. Bonfils,
Aye.
Mr. Sultan,
Aye.
Sursaklar? Angeline? All right, she may be having some technical difficulties, so I will just,
Sorry.
very good,
Yeah,
thank
it was
you.
on mute. I apologize. Yeah.
That's okay, thank you so much. All right, motion passed unanimously.
And Jewel, I'm on
Okay.
as well. This is Keith. I'm on as well. Aye.
Thank you, Keith.
Now, remind me, Keith is not on the committee. Is that
Jewel,
correct?
it's Sean. I'm on as well.
Hi, Sean, very
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I'm not on the
Members,
committee. That's correct, Mark.
Morning.
I'm on the committee.
yeah, members of the committee will be voting and I'll be
Okay.
doing a roll call. But thank you for letting me know you're here because I'll actually add you as attendees. Thank you.
Okay, well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen and mute my mic.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kathleen Witten. I'm a senior project engineer in the Capital Design Department, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the design task order for the Broad Run Farms water main extension. Can you all hear me? Okay, good.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right, so I'm gonna start by talking a little bit about the background of why we're doing this project. So Broad Run Farms is a community where the first occupant in the subdivision as we know it today moved in the 1950s. And that was before Countryside was built or George Washington University subdivision was built. So all of the Broad Run Farms homes had well and septic. In 1973, VDH approved the Hidden Lane landfill, which is directly to the east of the Broad Run Farms community. However, Loudoun County did not approve of the landfill, and in 1983, it closed. I'm going to point out in the 90s, Broad Run Farms actually had a low pressure sewer installation in it because the septic systems were failing, and that'll come up later in the presentation. In 2005, the county and EPA began investigations into drinking water wells in Broad Run Farms because some wells were coming up with trichloroethylene hits, or TCE, which is a known carcinogen. And so the EPA designated the Hidden Lane landfill a Superfund site in 2008. And part of that, the EPA started to install point of entry treatment systems in some of these residences to try and filter out that TCE. So 10 years later, the EPA study was completed, which recommended that the Broad Run Farms community be connected to the public water system, because at that point, Countryside was built out and the public water is readily available now. So but the EPA report only recommended to connect a portion of Broad Run Farms to the public water system. So the county asked if the EPA would be willing to fund the extension of the water main to the rest of the community. And the EPA said that they could only extend it to a certain area that was in the buffer zone of the Hidden Lane landfill leachate. So Loudoun County decided last year that they would fund the extension of the water main throughout the rest of the community and asked Loudoun Water to do the design and construction of that. So I'm going to pause here for 1 second and ask, are there any questions that I could possibly answer about this, the background on the Hidden Lane landfill? All right. So I'm going to take a step back and talk about where is Broad Run Farms, so we get a better understanding. Can I move this? No. So Broad Run Farms is north of Route 7. I know that's kind of hard to see. That's Route 7 right there. It's between Route 7 and the Potomac River. So this is the Hidden Lane landfill property, this blue color. That's where the landfill was. And this area, this kind of triangular shaped parcel, is the Broad Run Farm subdivision. this, you can't really tell the color, but the blue line, I guess, is the final decision by the EPA of the buffer zone of the landfill. So they are going to serve any lots that are within that blue line. So the EPA project is serving about 140 residences with the public water system. So the county is going to serve the rest of these lots that are shown in like this pink color with our project. So that's over 300 parcels. One thing I want to point out on this map that's kind of easier to see, this white line up here is the Potomac River. So a lot of these lots down here are really close to the river and they're in the floodplain. There could be wetlands. Just something to keep in mind. So the project consists of over 3.5 miles of 8 and 12-inch water main. We are going to be providing a water service line and a meter crock for each of these parcels that are buildable. But we are not connecting any homes. The county isn't paying for any availability fees for any of these lots. So if a property owner would like to be connected to the public water system, they're going to have to come back in with a plumber after our project is over and make the connection themselves. Something else that's kind of interesting about this project is it's a brownfield site. So that's going to bring up a lot of challenges. Because it's a existing community, we're going to try to stay in the VDOT right-of-way as much as possible. But as I mentioned before, there is an existing low-pressure sewer system out there. Unfortunately, we think that it's buried at about 3.5 feet deep, which is right where we'd like our water main to be. So it could present some challenges depending on where that sewer main was actually laid. Because it's already a developed community, it's also quite possible we're going to run into problems with the existing electric communications, possibly gas mains out there, including the sewer. So there's a lot to try and get around. Also, the VDOT right-of-way that is existing out there is not a curb and gutter section. It's a ditch section. Therefore, there isn't necessarily a whole lot of room to put these meter crocks because we don't want to put meter crocks in the ditch. On one side of the road or the other, we may need to get easements on private property for meter crocks or for hydrants. And so we've allocated some money for approximately 140 easement plats. That's about 60% of the lots we're intending to connect. Just in case we really do have to get all those easements. So the actual task order includes a lot of field work. So we've worked with J2 engineers to scope this task order, and they actually did the feasibility study when the county asked us to do the bypass communities study last year or the year before. So they're familiar with the site and the layout that's necessary. So we wanted a lot of field work because this is a brownfield site, because we don't really know what's in the ground, and because there is a lot of things we're trying to avoid out there. So we scoped it with a field run survey instead of an aerial survey, because the aerial survey may not pick up that contour of the ditch line that we need to know, so we know how deep our water services and our fire hydrant leads need to be. It also might not pick up trees, mailboxes, driveway culverts, that sort of thing. So we really wanted that field run survey. Some of the other field work that we're including is wetland investigation, just in case there are wetlands out there that we need to know about and try to avoid. We're doing soil borings because we are going to try to stay in the VDOT right-of-way. We need to make sure that we put back the correct backfill in the trenches for VDOT and the county. And then we also included utility investigations or test pitting. so that if we do run into a case where we're crossing a large storm pipe or the existing sewer mains, we can go out there and dig a test pit and really find out where that is so that we have a better idea while we're doing the design, not when we're in construction, if we need to move something. So the task order includes all of that, and then additionally the design, the 306090 plans and specs. The permitting, we're going to need Loudoun County permits. We're going to need a VDOT permit. And then the well and septic abandonment. So this was something that's a little bit unique to these retrofit type communities where a public water main can't be within 25 feet of a septic system. So if somebody did not connect to our low pressure sewer system, then they will still have a septic system. And if it happens to be in their front yard where we're passing through with the water main, we may need to abandon that septic system. And that comes with additional permits, additional design, a connection to the existing sewer system. It's just something we wanted to make sure we had money for that if indeed we do need to do it. So I want to talk a little bit about the schedule. So the reason why I'm here today and talking about this project, the reason why it's essential is because we're trying to keep up with the EPA project. The county has requested that we only disrupt the Broad Run Farms community once with construction if we can. And so the EPA submitted their first submission to our land development department last month, and they're hoping to have approval of their design by, I think, the end of next week. And so then they can get funding for procuring the easements that they need this July. And we're assuming that they'll get funding for the actual construction next July, at which point we are hoping to have most of our easements procured and have 90% design complete. So therefore we can start construction in the end of 2021 along with the EPA. I'm going to pause for a second and just ask, are there any questions on the scope of the task order? All right. So this project wasn't.
Hi
Sure.
there. Yes. Before you move on, I just had a question. If you go back to the previous slide, please. Where it says mid 2021, 90% design complete.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it only 90% design complete? Why is it not 100%?
We want to make sure that we can procure all of those easements that we need before we finalize the design. So I'm assuming it's going to take a while to get those easements from people. So I didn't want to say that we would be 100% complete by the middle of next year, because I'm assuming that it's going to take a little while for us to get all of our easements. I don't really want to finalize the design and say everything's good to go if we don't have those easements, because we may not be able to use that alignment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah, that answers my question. I have another question. Previous slide to this, you talked about some of the challenges that this project might face. What sort of other challenges are we looking at here, apart from the ones that you have just mentioned?
So there's definitely physical challenges, the ones that I talked about, but then there could be political challenges. I don't know if everyone in the Broad Run Farms community is really open to this. I don't think this is a tax district. I think the county is funding this completely, so I don't know if anybody would object. But other than that, I'm not really 100% sure on that.
Okay. All right. No, yeah, no, thank you. I'm just following through, and I just wanted to make sure that we are assessing the risks that are involved in this project. So thank you for that. Continue forward. Thank you.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions before I move on? Okay. So this project was included in our 2020 CIP. It's Water 138. We allocated $11 million for design and construction. This money will be fully reimbursed by the county, and the county has already authorized $1 million for the design. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the task order fee and how we got there. So as I said before, we're using J2 engineers for this design task order. So we broke it down for you a little bit about how we got to that $752,000. Basically, J2 is about 500,000 of that, and then they have some sub-consultants to finish out the rest of that task order fee. So the preliminary engineering that we're showing here includes all that field survey that I was talking about because we asked for the field run survey. It includes gathering and reviewing any as-built drawings, either Loudon Water as-built or any dry utility as-built, and reviewing that information. The design fee is literally just putting the plans and specifications together. We're assuming there'll probably be about 30 or 40 sheets in this plan set because it is just a water main, but it's over 3.5 miles of water main, so it's a lot of water main. The permitting, like I said, it's a Loudoun County grading permit, it's a VSMP permit, it's a VDOT permit to actually get approved. And then the easements, we allocated money for about 60% of the lots to have an easement on them. So J2 will drop all those easement plats. They'll do one draft and one final, and hopefully we can make that work for the homeowners. And then the sub-consultant fees, the wetland study includes the wetland survey, delineation, jurisdictional determination if necessary, and then permitting for the wetland if we run into any. Cost estimating is just to help J2 get a better handle on our final construction cost. The geotechnical investigation is those soil borings I talked about and the report that we can use during the bid phase to give to contractors and to give to VDOT and the county so that they're assured that we're using correct backfill under the road. And then utility investigations are the test pits that I talked about. So finding out where those utility crossings really are. And then if we need help in designing the relocation of any utility poles or dry utilities, that's included in that as well. So we ended up at about 7% of the estimated construction costs. And that estimated construction cost was when J2 did the feasibility study for the county, I think it was 2 years ago, they came up with $10.5 million.
Wait, can you repeat that again? When was this study done? Sorry.
I think it was 2 years ago. We did the bypass communities study for the county, and Broad Run Farms was included in that because there's public water on either side of it. So it's within our central service area, but does not have central water service.
So based on that feasibility study, we are doing an estimation construction cost of the amount that's stated here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and I just had another question. With these percentages on the side here, so for the preliminary engineering, 1.2%, and so on and so forth, and the total fee rounded, to the amount standing here with that 7%, is that percentage is different from this one, right? So it's not a calculated percentage, right? Is this 3, 4, 6? Okay, 6.5. So, okay. I'm just trying to understand, where did you get that 7% from? Is that separate?
That's just, so the 7% is just 752 divided by the 10.5. So that's just literally the design percentage of the estimated construction cost. That's what we're estimating.
Okay, thank you.
Kathleen, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I guess one may be for Carl or Jonathan, but you know, I know if it's a political issue, we're going to pass this on to the county. We're not going to get in the middle of any political issues, I assume, correct?
I'm not.
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then since it is a pipe job, are we going to do all the construction administration in-house?
Yes, we would do the inspections, and I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of additional work required by the engineer during construction, other than the typical shop drawing and submittal reviews. But
yeah, no, I understand
nothing heavy.
RFIs and shop drawings, et cetera. I just want to make sure that we're doing the inspections, et cetera. We're not spending any more. Not that it matters since they're paying for it, but you know, we still have fiscal responsibilities.
Right, and they'll also take care of our costs, I imagine, with that too. And
just a recommendation for everybody when we're in the, especially when we're in at the board meeting next week, just a reminder that to get your screen. I mean, Kathleen's perfect in her screen. She's got light on her face. She's got you know, she's centered. You know, Sean looks like he's like a little gopher there with just his head poking out. But you might want to make sure that you're adjusted. I've been through this already hundreds of times, and like Roddy's real dark. But just for everybody to know, there's 3 dots on the screen next to where the mute and camera is. And if you click that, you can see that you can change your background. And I think it's important that you don't show the public your personal house or your personal things at your homes and put a background on. You can have, I have a fake office behind me, and I'm not in my office. But you can have a blurred background. But just this, again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but just wanted so that when we go in front of the public next week, you guys know that. That's all it has, Kathleen. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question.
Yeah.
It's a minor. Just curious, who does the cost estimating?
Let me see. I think I have it right here. Cost estimating. Didn't say. Let me look.
It's not. I'm just curious. If you don't have the information, that's okay. I was just curious.
I think it's Downey and Scott.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I was telling you the right thing.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So the only thing I have left is the recommended motion. We are going to ask for 5% contingency just because there are a lot of unknowns out there, a lot of challenges with the brownfield site. But keep in mind that this task order approval is still contingent upon the purchase order from Loudoun County.
Well, it's going to consent. So, Jonathan, do we need to vote each time, or how's that work?
I would say however you normally make decisions on whether items go to consent or action.
Oh, I thought we have to make it consent. Is that correct, or was I wrong on reading that?
I don't think there's any procedural requirement as to whether it's consent or action.
I just said on my chairman's statement, it says all items will be recommended as, oh, I see, as action items. Okay, got it. It's not, so are we allowed to make it consent or not, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think we can. I don't see any reason why we couldn't have items on consent if that's your preference.
Okay.
Are there any? I make the recommended motion and ask to have it placed on consent.
I second.
I have a question for Kathleen. Yeah, so it says here, well, if you go back to the previous slide, it says 752, so where does this $100, added to that come from for the estimated cost? Because on the previous screen, it's just that total amount is 752, but here we have another $100. What is that for?
We just rounded the fee on that previous slide to make it easy math with the percentages. So we didn't come up with,
Okay.
decimals.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask for questions, but Jim jumped in there so quick. So are there any other questions? And Marty, can you adjust your screen a little better? Anyway, yeah, are there any other questions for Kathleen? Okay, Jim, why don't you go ahead again?
Okay. I make the recommended motion that's on the screen and request that it be placed on consent.
I second.
Roll call, Jewel.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kobliss,
Aye.
Mr. Bonfils,
Aye.
Mrs. Sarkar,
Aye.
Mr. Sultan,
Aye.
unanimous. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kathleen. All right. Next is is Rick. So now I have to say their last names. Zafel, is that close?
Yes, very close.
Okay, great. You're on, Rick.
Okay. Good morning. I'm here today to request the award of the construction contract for the Broad Run Water Reclamation Facility Expansion Project. And just to go through the agenda here, the slide's not, there we go. Okay, so in my presentation for today, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Broad Run Water Reclamation Facility. We're going to go through the need for the project, talk a little bit about the project schedule, project scope, cost-saving measures, and then some of the challenges associated with this project. Then we're going to go through the construction schedule, kind of review the bid and award process, quickly look at the 2020 CIP budget, and then we'll wrap up and conclude. So to look at the history here of Broad Run, so in the early days of Loudoun Water, we exclusively relied on our 13.8 million gallon per day capacity at the Blue Plains DC water facility for all wastewater treatment, and that started in the 1960s and carried forward for several decades. And in the 1990s, Loudoun Water realized that with population growth and increasing wastewater flows, we would use up that 13.8 million gallons of capacity. And so we began preliminary engineering work in 1999 for the Broad Run Water Reclamation Facility. And then we designed and constructed it and brought it online in 2008. And then, of course, population growth and wastewater flows continued to increase in the county. And so in 2014, we began a master plan to look into expanding the Broad Run facility. And that was completed in 2017, at which time we began the design of this project, which is a 5 million gallon per day expansion to the plant. And of course, looking ahead, we plan to start construction in 2020 and then completely wrap up construction by 2024. And so real quickly here, the graphic on your left, it shows the present day configuration of wastewater flows, where we have the blue area going to Blue Plains to use up that 13.8 MGD capacity to maximize that. And it's the yellow area that flows into Broad Run That's the amount that's over and above the 13.8 that we have to treat in the county. But previously, in the early days, all of the county went to Blue Plains through the Potomac Interceptor. All right.
Will the JLMA go to Broad Run?
That will most likely go to Broad Run. It's sort of undecided, at this point, what that's going to look like. But in time, that flow will probably go to Broad Run. Okay. Some facts about Broad Run here. As I mentioned, it was commissioned in 2008. It was a 4-year construction process from 04 to 08. The original plant construction was $190 million for the initial 10 million gallon per day capacity, and that's based on 2006 dollars. And at the time, Broad Run was the largest membrane bioreactor treatment plant in the world when it came online in 2008. So as you can imagine, it's a very highly automated, state-of-the-art facility, and for good reason, because we have very strict discharge limits here in Loudoun County for the plant. And so to talk about the need for the project, so I mentioned, population growth and increasing wastewater flows, and that really is the driver for the project. In the plot here, I've got some historical data that shows flows into Broad Run, going back to a few years after we commissioned Broad Run, and then going forward, of course, as far as we have data. We've got our 10 MGD capacity right now shown with that first diamond. And then, of course, we've got our trend of increasing wastewater flows into Broad Run out into the future. And of course, there's some there's some uncertainty as we move out into the future, as you can see with the light blue band around the plot. But the point is here that construction is necessary to start on this next expansion to bring us up to 15 MGD of capacity in 2020, so that we can have those facilities online by 2023, 2024 timeframe, so that when flows do bump up over our 10 MGD capacity, we have the new facilities online to be able to take care of those additional flows. And then that same philosophy applies to the next expansion, which is assumed to be up to 20 MGD out in the future by approximately, the year 2030, give or take. Again, there's some uncertainty, as you move out into the future dates, because we need to kind of take things year by year, and that's 10 years out into the future. So it'll come into clearer focus as we get there for the future expansion. But the point here is that growth and increasing wastewater flows are driving the need for this expansion to 15 MGD. Okay. A little bit about the project schedule. So I mentioned the master plan that did begin in late 2014 and wrapped up in 2017. And then at that time, we began design of this project, which took a little over 2 years. And we wrapped up design of the project at the end of last year. And then we've been in a bid and award stage since the beginning of the year, with the goal here to start construction either next month or early August, and wrap up construction by 2024 with substantial completion targeted for the end of 23, beginning of 2024. And so before I get into the some of the scope of the project, I just want to see, are there any questions on this sort of historical background information that I've shared so far?
Yeah, I got a quick question. It's and this is just so that you can talk to it further. It seems like we are right on the bubble in on finishing the project on time, and that we didn't have a great project. The last one, it was 2 years late with the water project. And it looks like we cannot be more than a year late on this one. So just, if you could talk to that, that would be great.
Sure. I think, I can say from my own personal experience, working on some sort of the tail end, a little bit of the preliminary design and through the design, that we've taken a lot of care to to make sure with our contract documents that the work and the scope is clear, and that we've done everything possible to to assure that it'll be complete by 2023, 2024. So I think that's one thing, and also I'll mention too that there is some variability in the flows. If I could, I'll back up to this slide. So you see, this is a little bit of a subtlety, but if you see how the 2019 data point kicks up a little bit, kind of to the high side of the trend, that's evident of a very wet year in 2018, and then on into the spring of 2019, we had a very wet year. And so there is some variability, in the future projection. It's not an exact science. And I think, again, the 2018-19 timeframe was abnormally wet, record, in fact, when you take 12 months segments of the precipitation. And so I don't think that that's very likely to repeat, which would put a little bit of downward pressure, on the trend going forward. So I think there's
that's one aspect, Rick, and I if I could just weigh in, another component of this is the fact that we have planned the work to be done in a way that we have some early milestones that include the additional equalization. We're doubling the size of the plant's equalization, which is more than necessary, for this particular expansion. But there was some economy of scale in building a 10 MGD or 10 million gallon EQ basin with this project that will also be there and sufficient for the next expansion. But that extra equalization gives us some storage basically on site to deal with extra flow during times of heavy flow, and will help mitigate some of that risk that you're talking about. And the other thing is that we've had very, very preliminary discussions with DC Water and some with Fairfax County as well about the ability to utilize some of the additional capacity, for a very temporary basis while we complete construction. So those are things on our radar, things to finish up with too. So we feel like both with the conservatism in this flow projection and some of those tools that we'll have in the toolbox, that we should be in very good shape.
Hey, Rick, one last quick question. I was just starting when the original project was finishing, and if I remember, I don't know if you were here, Rick. I know Roddy was, but that project was late, and it had to do. The contractor had some issues. I think we even brought in a new contractor, and we also, there were the inspectors. They didn't inspect on time. There was a lot of issues on finishing. I was just wondering how late that project was.
I wasn't here, honestly, when you're talking about the initial Broad Run construction, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. I've only heard bits and pieces. Of course, I wasn't here at the time, but I heard it was a year or so late, and I've heard that it was somewhat of it wasn't a joint venture, but there were 5 individual contracts. One contractor got 2 of those pieces, and the other contractor got 3 of them. So it was kind of an even split sort of between two contractors, and I've heard that one of the contractors performed very well and was on time, but the other one did not, and it sort of, slowed the whole process. And I think it extended a year or so, if I'm not mistaken, beyond the original anticipated completion date.
Right, and you may be thinking of Frucon, who had most of the plant construction portion of the project, but they did finish the work, but it was somewhat delayed. We had some challenges early on with some of the inspections from county officials that we I'm sure you heard mentioned at some board meetings, Mark. And so, but I think overall it wasn't anything close to a disastrous project. It was just it did have some challenges to get to completion.
I have a question. Mark mentioned that the treatment plant was way behind schedule, and one of the problems, if I remember correctly, was the contractor had trouble getting qualified personnel. With the pandemic being around, what do you guys see as a problem of moving ahead in an expeditious manner and meeting that schedule?
So I don't know about the staffing on the original Broad Run construction, although I do know that staffing was a challenge for the Trap Rock project.
Yeah, I meant the Trap Rock project as far as staffing.
Okay, and I think that, in part it might have been attributed to the power plant project going on right next door, and I, kind of heard through the grapevine that they paid a little better than PC construction, but nevertheless, in talking with the low bidder on this project, Corman Kokosing, and we'll get to that in the later in the presentation. They've said that they're still really busy. They had no concerns about submitting a bid or having the resources available to do the project or to complete the project. So for what it's worth, they're confident that they can maintain the staff, bring the resources necessary here to get the project done for their bid price in the contract time. So I mean, there is that level of confidence that we've gotten just in talking a little bit with the low bidder.
Okay, I'm just wondering if that's going to be a problem, but okay, thanks.
Okay. Any further questions or? Okay, I'll move on ahead here. So I've got a process schematic of the existing Broad Run facility on the screen here. So the liquid side of the plant moves from left to right across the top of the screen, and then we've got our equalization, and then the solids process drops down here and then moves left to right on the bottom. And so when we start to add in the new treatment facilities here, the yellow outline indicates new process structures that are included as part of the expansion project. And so these are more of the upfront preliminary and primary treatment processes where we're adding new footprint or new structures. Of course, there's the equalization tank that Roddy mentioned as we were discussing the prior slide. And then the blue coming up here shows where we're modifying existing process structures within the same building envelope or concrete footprint to re-rate them and get the capacity we need so that the overall plant has a 15 MGD capacity. So it's the simpler structures, the simpler processes where we have new concrete footprint, and the more complicated processes where we're able to re-rate and make modifications in the existing building footprint or concrete footprint to get the additional capacity. And so as we take a look at a plan view of the project here, I've got the same theme going where yellow represents the new process structures and blue represents the modified process structures. And then the little red squares just show a portion of some of the pipe-to-pipe tie-ins that are included in the project. And so the point I want to illustrate here is that most of the plant is impacted by this project. It pretty well touches all of the processes, but again, the new process structures are minimal and you know, as few as possible. And we utilize the ability to modify process structures where possible to get additional capacity without having to, you know, build more concrete. Okay. And so this ties into the cost saving measures that are included in the project. One of the guiding principles of the master plan work that was done in 2014 to 2017 was that we were going to leverage existing assets first and utilize the resources that we have built and in place to the greatest extent possible in order to help get us the additional capacity. And so we've done that in, again, minimizing the new structures and optimizing the secondary and advanced processes with modifications within the existing concrete footprint. And you know, it's those secondary and advanced processes that are more complicated and more expensive. And so it does save money to be able to just modify those without having to add additional concrete to, you know, to get the additional capacity for those. And then, of course, one other point to make here is that our solids dewatering processes creates a high strength side stream waste, and we are actually able to send that to DC water for treatment rather than having to build a treatment process as part of the expansion to treat that small volume high strength waste stream. And then the other point I want to make here about cost savings is that there's an economy of scale factor built into the project because we have consolidated in several additional smaller CIP projects related to Broad Run and also some repair and rehab items associated with Broad Run that were on the books, and we've consolidated all of these into the single contract, which gives you that nice economy of scale factor for this project. And so as we move ahead here, talk about some of the challenges associated with the project. So as I showed you on one of the prior slides, this is a retrofit project that impacts most of the Broad Run facilities located at the plant. As Roddy mentioned, we've got some early delivery milestones built into the project. We've got process tie-ins. And then, of course, to govern all of this work, we have numerous sequencing constraints, and there'll be ongoing coordination with Broad Run staff. The little graphic here is kind of the project team. It's sort of the classic project team pictorial of, you know, how the project will be delivered, where we've got the three parties around the central goal of delivering the expansion project. But since this is a retrofit project and we are required to meet permit throughout the course of construction, in order to protect the public health, it casts a little bit of a different light on the owner's responsibility, and so we're required to meet permit through the course of construction, and that kind of drives our that sort of drives us as a top priority as we work to construct the new facilities and make sure that, you know, we observe all the sequencing constraints and all of the tie-ins happen appropriately without disruption to the existing plant, and basically we protect the operation of the plant. And so one point I want to make here in addition is that, you know, this project is kind of like a surgical procedure or a series of surgical procedures that are very delicate because we're working on an existing plant. And, you know, instead of doing the alternative where we would expand the plant, say, to the north and do kind of a greenfield 50% expansion of the existing plant, where we'd basically just build 50 50% of capacity or 5 MGD to the north, and then kind of tie it in at the end, that approach would cost a whole lot more, but it would be a little bit easier to manage because you'd just be tying in those facilities, at the end. But this approach costs much less, where we're intermingling, in the existing plant to build these new facilities. It costs a whole lot less because it allows us to, like I mentioned before, leverage existing assets first, but we do have to be a lot more diligent because the plant has got to meet capacity and comply with permit throughout the course of construction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question, Rick.
Yes.
So the original plant was designed for expansion, right?
Yes, it was. It was designed with
we
expansion in mind.
We were always going to expand this way. I was just wondering why you were talking about possibly going to the north. I thought we were always going to just expand the plant.
No, actually, that was a change, Mark, in how we approach this this intermediate expansion. The original thought was that we would add a 10 MGD plant beside this, and but what we realized is that there was some technology that we wanted to allow to develop further before we made some of those bigger decisions, and that we really could squeeze a little more capacity out of this existing footprint with some areas that had to be expanded slightly. But when we made those expansion decisions, we did account then also for the ability to make those facilities accommodate the next level expansion. So there was a lot of thought that went into this, and I think we ended up threading a pretty good needle with this particular project.
Okay, and Rick, I have a question about the slide before.
Yes.
So you said you included additional related CIP projects and maintenance, repair, rehab items. About how much are those two items worth?
I don't have an exact figure, but it's just a few percent. I'm going to say plus or minus 5% or so, based on some calculations I did 6 to 8 months ago on this.
And did Hazen design these related CIP projects?
Some of them were already designed as separate projects, and then they were sort of brought into the larger expansion. Some of them, didn't have a whole lot of design really associated with them, and that's sort of the repair and rehab variety there. Kind of replacement items, and there was 1 or 2 smaller designs that happened independent of the expansion project by Hazen that were then brought in to the expansion project construction.
Okay, and will they be the projects that were designed before? Are they going to take over the construction administration, which I guess we're going to talk about next, on those CIP, those related projects?
Right, they would be folded into the overall or the larger construction administration, yes.
And then can you tell, didn't we buy some membranes or something like that beforehand to get a good price? I can't remember why we did it. And I was just wondering about what the value of that was. And I assume we're assigning those contracts to this contractor.
Correct. Yeah, we pre-purchased or pre-selected membranes to to be included as part of the upgrades with Suez, which is the original installer or manufacturer of the membranes that are in place, and then we're going to assign that that purchase agreement or that contract to the general contractor, and that's worth about $4 million.
And we actually paid for that. The contractor is not paying for that. He's just assigning the risk, or we're assigning the risk to him. Correct.
So what we have paid, we've paid for the small amount of design associated with the membrane work, and that was it was a little less than $100,000, and that's all we've paid for to date. The membranes will be paid for through the general contractor. So that $4 million will be out of the general contractor's bid price.
Oh, okay. All right,
Okay.
thanks.
Okay, any more questions before I move on and talk about the construction schedule? Okay. So now we're going to walk through a construction schedule that will take us from notice to proceed to substantial completion, complying with all of the requirements that I mentioned on the previous slide about meeting permit throughout the course of construction and the sequencing constraints and other items built into the contract documents to protect us during the course of construction. So we're going to step through in 6-month increments through the construction here. So here we are at the notice to proceed. The sort of hatched items are the buildings that were blue previously, where we're modifying existing structures. The darker items are the new concrete footprint that I characterized with yellow on the prior slides. And so at notice to proceed, we're just getting started here. And as we move into the first 6 months of the project, that's very focused on submittals. There's a lot of paperwork, quote unquote, going on during the first 6 months. And then also on the legend on the left, you can see the different disciplines of work that are characterized. And so, during this first 6 months, we start to get into some of the early work. Of course, the contractor's trailers is, going to happen very early. And then some of the work that starts is that early milestone work that we discussed previously. That gets going here in the first 6 months. And then also some of the work that is less constrained, that has simpler, constraints or even little or no constraints associated with it, starts to get going here in the first 6 months. And then as we move ahead, we pick up some more work areas. We actually start to see some of the early work finish there with the blue, and some of the early milestone work finish. And we're still ramping up construction activities. We get into December 2021, and we've sort of maximized the amount of work. We have a constraint built in that says, no more than 6 process areas of work can occur concurrently at any one time. And so, here we are kind of mid-stride, and we're moving toward maximizing that constraint. We've got the yard piping going on as well. We start to see a few more things completed, like our equalization tank and valve structure. That's that additional 10 MGD of capacity for storage that we'll have by the midpoint of the project that Roddy mentioned. And then we keep going, and things ramp up a little more. Got some more work finishing up here. Yard piping is kind of winding down at this point. And at this point in the project, all of the early delivery milestone work is done, and we start to get into a little bit more of the work that's constrained more particularly or heavier. And so that work now is ongoing. It's a little bit more delicate, at this point. We move ahead, and I'll just point out that the membrane work is perhaps the most delicate work of the project, and so that's why it's toward the back end of the project here. It's just getting started, in this December 2022 timeframe. Okay, and then as we roll on toward substantial completion, the last little bit of work that's left is the membrane work, and everything else is completed. And then we jump ahead to our substantial completion date, and all of the work is completed. Okay. And so how did we get to this point of being sort of on the doorstep of construction? So we went through the bid and award process. It was late January that we advertised the project for bid. Thankfully, we were able to squeeze our pre-bid conference and pretty extensive field visit in late February before the COVID situation started. And then sort of in the March, April timeframe, we were working on addenda to the contract documents. We had We had 9 addenda issued during the bid period, and I'll say this: the bid period was extended some because of the COVID. It was originally, we were going to open bids in April, but the bids did push to May because of the COVID situation. And so we received 4 bids on the 21st of May, and we're seeking board approval next week so that we can get construction started late July, early August, hopefully.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
if you go back to that work timeline phase slide prior to the slide where we talk about the membrane, and then we're looking at December 2020, and what I heard you say was that this particular membrane work is a little challenging. Can you please elaborate on that? Because I'm looking at December, and then you're saying that with this membrane work, it seems a little bit sensitive and challenging. I just want to get a better context on that. So if you can just elaborate that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. I use the word delicate to describe the membrane work because the membranes are the heart of the plant. I mentioned before that this was designed as a state-of-the-art sort of pioneer membrane plant in the mid-2000s, and then of course brought online as the largest of its kind in 2008. And so we've strategically placed the membrane work toward the end of the project at a point when we have the additional 10 million gallons of equalization available to us to store additional flows, because when we do the membrane work, process trains will have to be taken offline in order to fit in the new membranes and do the controls modification and the valves, modify and change out the valves, etc. And like I mentioned before, that this particular facility is in the no new concrete sort of camp, and so we're basically retrofitting the existing treatment trains and existing channels to give us the additional flow. And so in order to take down the treatment trains to perform those modifications, we've constrained membranes to the end of the project, or to the latter stages of the project, at a point when we have the additional 10 million gallons of storage capacity. And one thing that's not shown here is that we also will have the ability to convey influent flows out to the diversion structure and out to the PI just for very short-term moments, if necessary, to support the membrane work while we have channels down being modified. So that's sort of the thought process with pushing the membrane work to the latter stages of the project, when we have sort of a buffer with the equalization and the ability to divert, so that if necessary we can do that. Does that kind of answer your question, and does that make sense?
It does, and I have just one layer of question that I would like to add to that. So is this whole process taking place internally, inside, or is it taking place outside?
So the membranes are in a sort of a concrete structure that is, it's got covers. It's basically, there's a concrete deck, and the membrane trains are below the deck with covers on them. And so that particular work will happen outside, because we'll remove the lids or the covers on the trains and be in the trains from the top of the deck. But at the same time, the other work associated with changing out instrumentation and control programming and valves and other accessories, that all that supporting equipment for the membranes is within a building. So that will happen inside under roof.
And how long do you think this particular phase will take? Because we're looking at December here. I know it's 2022, but December is that month of the year where, living in this western part of the world, two things, the weather is not very favorable, and two, it's the holiday season. So I'm just going to be asking you, keeping those risks in mind, how long do you think this particular process will take if we're looking at December? If we're not looking at further delays or any unexpected contingencies.
Right. So I think it will take approximately 12 months, give or take, to do all of the membrane work.
Okay.
And there are very particular constraints in the contract documents about when this work can happen, and the holiday factor, the weekend factor plays in. We will be extremely careful and extremely adamant that, number one, the construction work is protected from the elements, and number two, we're not left with kind of like one arm tied behind our back over a long weekend or a holiday weekend where, if we had a big high flow event or something, we would be potentially hurt because facilities were offline. So the meetings that will precede this work and the discussions will be lengthy and many to be sure that this work happens with minimal impacts to the overall performance of the facility.
Okay, thank you. No, that was just my underlying issue, that, we don't want a lot of, we want to have less minimal impact, if you can say. I'm just looking at the unexpectancies here. So thank you for answering that. Yeah, we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so, does any more questions before we talk about numbers?
Yeah, I have a quick one.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if it's quick, but once you go through this slide first, and then
Sure. Okay. So we've got our bid tabulation presented for you. As I mentioned, we received 4 bids. We have a pretty good bid spread there, ranging from 76 million to 101 million. And then I've put our engineer's estimate there, which is within the bid spread there. And we felt like we got good competition on this project with the numbers here, and certainly a very favorable number from the low bidder. And I think that a couple of things may have influenced the spread there, and particularly, why Corman Kokosing was able to take the project so low. I did speak with them, and they said that COVID, it didn't scare them away from submitting a bid or from feeling like they could pull together the resources to prepare a bid or to deliver the project. As I mentioned before, they said they're very busy and they haven't missed a beat during the COVID process. However, I do think, and by the way, contractors don't admit this. They don't like to talk about this. They don't like to admit this, but I do think market conditions that were probably influenced by COVID may have pulled their bid down a little bit lower than some of the others in an effort to perhaps keep their staff busy or pick up a big job or maybe other several big jobs as they bid in other places, to have a healthy backlog as we have rumors of being on the front end of a recession. So it's nice to have a big backlog as a company to get you through a recession. And then the other thing I want to mention about these numbers here is that the engineer's estimate was prepared in the November-December timeframe. That was what was in Hazen's tasking to do as they prepared their final construction estimate, and so it was presented to us in January. And so there still is some what I'll call error factor built into that number. It's a class 1 estimate, so there's a -10 to +15% bracket sort of around that number. And then also there is, in addition, a 10% design contingency built into that number. So, I want to share those factors, as you're looking at the bid numbers and perhaps wondering, maybe why there's a difference between Corman's low bid and the engineer's estimate. And So that's really all I wanted to share on this slide. But Mr. Koblis, I think you had a question.
Thanks, Rick. Real quick, the last thing you said, there's a 10% design factor. What does that mean?
The 10% design contingency is, and I may need a little help on this from Hazen, but it's to characterize, the little bit of uncertainty in the numbers, in the way that the contractor would prepare his bid, and if I'm struggling to explain that.
Hey, Mark, this is Brian. I believe that is meant to cover sort of the market conditions and some uncertainty that they just simply cannot anticipate in the course of developing their estimate. They developed this estimate in December, and I think that the construction industry was a little different then than it was at the time we've just recently bid this job with the COVID pandemic. So I think it's meant to sort of cover those things. It's not meant, it's used primarily to help us develop a budget, because we have to have that as we present this to the procurement group to set this forward, to put this out for bid in the event we need to negotiate something and it comes out and the bid come in higher.
So it's not an extra $10 million of possible design costs.
No.
Okay.
I was able.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that they're not thinking there might be another $10 million worth of design.
No, we're done with that.
Sorry, I was able to kind of find the answer. So when I mentioned it was a class 1 estimate, the -10 to +15, that's sort of the accuracy factor, okay, of the estimate. And then, as Brian said, the design contingency is sort of an indicator of market conditions and a way to characterize that. So sorry, I didn't have that on my fingertips there.
That's all right. Pressure was on.
Yeah.
Are we having similar LDs as we did on the water? Same daily rate?
Yes, we have a meaningful liquidated damages on the overall performance there, reaching substantial completion, and then several of the critical milestones do have liquidated damages associated with them as well. For example, the milestone that includes the early delivery of the 10 million gallon equalization tank, that one has liquidated damages on it, definitely, because it's a very critical milestone.
Okay, and is there a bonus for early completion?
We have not included incentives in this project. I think there's some sentiment from past experience with that it can get a little bit sticky, in terms of interpreting how those are assessed, and also the benefits of those incentives perhaps hasn't quite been seen, as they were intended in previous projects. So we've opted not to include incentives.
Okay. Sometimes it balances out the LDs though, but I'm still worried about the schedule. My big question is, since we're $23 million less than our estimate, and I assume that's what our budget was, why don't we do something like we did on the water treatment plant, where we added that additional tank? I mean, can we add a 10 million gallon equalization tank now and have it installed, ready for when we jump to 20 million?
I think that we could do that, but I think that the design money for that is not authorized in any fashion and so we, you know, we sort of were focusing on the scope at hand, and we're kind of you know, constrained by not really having the design money left over to add that to the project.
Well, I think to your point, Mark, we could definitely consider some things like that. You know, just to clarify again, that 10 million gallons of additional EQ. The current plant has 10 million gallons of equalization. We're adding 10 with this 50% plant expansion. So we have that extra. We're building in that extra EQ now that will accommodate the 20. And all of this we're assuming that a next expansion will be to 20. It could be that we make a decision to increase by another 10 MGD with this next expansion or some other number. So, but all that aside, something else to point out is this bid had, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 4 bid alternates that were included that we were we wanted to put them out there and see if the pricing came in well. And if it did, then great, we're going to go forward with all of that. And if not, then we knew we could set those things aside and do them later, perhaps. So, but this bid came in obviously so well that we're obviously including all of those. Those are all included in the bid price. And so I think, you know, all of this is a good story. But we can take another look to see if there's potential, like you spoke of, to add some work for early delivery onto this project.
I think it just should be a discussion amongst you guys. I
Yeah.
mean, you never know.
Yeah, I agree.
That's all
Okay.
I have a question. You mentioned that you're assigning the membrane contract to the contractor. I assume that the contract is picking up any liability for the membranes if they don't operate properly.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they're actually purchasing the membranes, and they're assuming full responsibility. We just pre-selected essentially the equipment.
Okay.
Okay. I'll move ahead here. So in our bid evaluation, you know, Corman Kokosing Construction Company was the apparent low bidder. And while this company is new to Loudon Water, they're not new to the construction industry. They go way back, and they're a very large construction company. They do have a Mid-Atlantic corporate office there in Annapolis, Maryland, and they are full services. You know, they have heavy construction capabilities with water and wastewater infrastructure, and you know, treatment plant experiences. I will say this, that in 2017, Corman Construction Company merged with Kokosing Industrial, and so Corman brought to the table the heavy civil, road, bridge, and utility specialties, and Kokosing Industrial brought to the table the heavy industrial, power, water and wastewater, oil and gas, and marine capabilities. And so, you know, the two of them together form a very large company with full service capabilities, including water and wastewater infrastructure. And in evaluating Corman Kokosing, we recommend that we go forward with the contract with them. They were an active participant in the bid process. They asked a lot of questions during the several months of the bid process there. They have large facility experience. They are going to self-perform about 60% of the work. As I mentioned before, their company resources are top-notch. They are using a familiar electrical subcontractor, the same one that worked on the Trap Rock project and the intake pump station. We checked out their references, and they were very positive, including water and wastewater improvements, plant improvements, and of course their cost is very competitive. And you know, they've done work as close as DC Water. In the picture here, I've got some pump station diversion work that they recently did at DC Water. So, you know, all things considered, you know, we're recommending that we proceed with Corman Kokosing. We feel like they're a very good fit for this project.
I have a
Okay.
question before you
Yes.
proceed forward. Would you please go back to the previous slide?
Yes.
So here, I just have a few questions. First, when it says self-performing 60% of the work, so I'm assuming the other 40% is going to be delegated to subcontractors?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. It's fine right now, but moving forward as a board director, it would be wonderful to actually know, who the electrical subcontractors they're looking at. Even if they don't have one or they haven't, finalized a subcontractor, we would still, we have a right to know that information, who would be the subcontractors that they are looking at, in terms of getting the other 40% of the work done.
Okay. I can share with you that the electrical subcontractor will be Singleton Electric. That's the firm that I mentioned that did the work at our Trap Rock plant and at our intake pump station plant.
Okay. And yeah, so moving forward next time in the presentation, if you can just, for fairness and transparency, just if that's highlighted here, that would be very beneficial for everyone.
Sure, I'll be glad to list those subcontractors.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so quick look at our CIP snapshot there. So, this project is listed as BRW2 in the 2020 CIP. And the budget, which I've circled in red, I'm sorry you can't see those numbers, but that is the overall construction budget for this expansion. And it's approximately 114 million. And it includes the construction contract with Corman Kokosing, as well as the engineering services that Brian is going to talk about here momentarily. And that budget should be more than enough to cover the construction contract and the engineering support services. And so with that, I've just got my recommended motion here, and I'll be glad to take any questions that are still out there.
I have one quick question, Rick. In support with Angeline's comment before, do you actually know who the subs are? Do you require them to have picked their subs by the time they do their bid? Because most contractors haven't picked their subs. They've they kind of go back out afterwards. Do we require the subs to be named all the time on our jobs?
We require that they be named in the bid form. So when they submit their bid, they have to list the subs, the major subs that they're going to use. And so, they have done that on their bid form. As far as dictating, who they choose as subs, I don't really think we have.
No, that wasn't what I was asking.
Okay.
Usually during the buyout, the contractor will change the subs, but if they list the subs on there, that's great. No, much preferred. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Any other questions on this? Somebody want to make a motion then for, obviously we can't, this shouldn't be under consent, so.
I make a motion that we accept the motion as shown.
Do we have a second?
Sure,
I'll second that.
Angeline, okay.
I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call vote, Mr. Kobliss,
Aye.
Mr. Bonfils,
Aye.
Ms. Sursikar,
Aye.
and Mr. Sultan.
Aye.
Unanimous, Mr. Kobliss.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rick. Great presentation.
Okay, thank you.
So the next one we're going to talk about is the approval of the basically construction administration services for this project. As most of you know, maybe not Angeline yet, but I've always had a extreme concern over this, and not over this particular project, just over construction administration in general. So I've looked at this from every single angle, and Brian has put together a very good package, and this is a high CM fee, but I believe it is deserved. Brian is going to go through the specifics, but just going through this thing, it is a high fee, but I think this is a very, very technical job. In fact, I think it's probably going to be more technical than what the water treatment plant will be, and especially not because maybe technical is not the correct word, but just the issues that these people are going to have to go through just seems tremendous. So it's a good lead in for you, Brian. So go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Koblis. I appreciate it. And yes, this is a complex project. Again, I haven't met some of the newer board members, but I'm Brian Stone. I'm the manager of capital construction here at Loudon Water. And I'm here to request an amendment for some engineering services through construction on the plant expansion that Rick just covered. Okay, let's see. Okay, all right. The agenda for this presentation includes these 8 bullet items shown here. I'm going to talk first about the engineering services and why they're needed. I'm going to talk then about the structure and then the roles of the different parties in the project. We'll get into how we develop the scope and fee. We built that from the bottom up, but I'll discuss that a little bit more. The fees themselves, and then I'm going to cover some cost comparisons because CA services or services during construction, they're very difficult to estimate, and there's a lot of factors that go into it: the complexity of the project, the size of the project. Obviously, for this project to maintain plant operations is going to be a real challenge for us. So we'll talk about that some more. So why are they needed? The engineering services are necessary to leverage the understanding and expertise, because the engineer designed this project. It goes all the way back to 2014 when they began preparing the master plan for us, and then we actually completed a solids expansion just last year. They have a lot of experience with the plant. They're very familiar with it, and so we want to leverage that familiarity and maintain the continuity. That'll provide greater efficiency for us, and will also make it more cost effective. And it will also protect our interest and help to mitigate the risk. And I've got the 4 bullet items there: prevent operational failures, avoid, mitigate cost claims, mitigate construction delays, and ensure quality work, because they're going to have a role in the field on this project as well to ensure the quality work. And through the engineer's understanding and inspections and administration, we'll be mitigating the risk as well as being indemnified regarding the design itself. We're protected that this design, if it's constructed as shown in the documents, it will work. And so that's important for us. That protects our interest.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
Go back. Can you talk a little bit about mitigating construction delays, because obviously that didn't work on the last project. I mean, it's basically means and methods that they can't control. So I'm just curious how they mitigate construction delays.
Okay. One of the things that we're going to be very active in the course of this project is looking for workaround solutions where we do have delays to the work. It's not just about the contractor suffering a delay. We're hurt when the contractor is delayed. So we want to work with them to discuss workaround solutions. So that's what I mean by that, is to try to find ways to work through problems that could be delaying the work. Does that answer your question, Mr. Koblis?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I created this risk register here for this the project, and I've actually got these in order because my biggest concern over this for this project is that we're going to be able is to deliver it in 3.5 years and to have it in operation by the end of 2023. So that, to me, that is the biggest, that's the thing that's going to keep me up at night for this project is the construction delays. If you look at the second bullet item here, Rick covered this a little while ago with the early milestone he discussed on the equalization. That's going to give us a little more resilience for this project. Once we get that delivered by the end of next year, that will give us some resilience and provide a little bit of relief regarding that schedule. Another thing that is going to be a real challenge for us is maintaining plant operation while we're constructing the plant expansion, because as Rick showed you earlier, we're not building that many new structures, but we're doing a lot of work in the existing plant. And to do that means we've got to take certain parts of the plant out of service to allow for tie-ins and to allow the construction to occur. And so working through all of that's going to be a real challenge, and there will be a great deal of submittals associated with that. We've got a lot of meetings that we're planning for that to ensure that that goes smoothly. So meeting the permit during construction is going to be another real challenge. I list another risk at the bottom, the impact to our control system. We're proposing to use eMerge for this project under this contract as well, be a subcontractor to Hazen. They've done a lot of the programming for us, and they understand our system and will provide a secure approach there as well. This is not the kind of work that we would have the contractor perform. We want to perform this ourselves for control purposes.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, and then I want to add, because some of the people might not realize some of the acronyms I'm using. When I say at the bottom here, the PLC and the SCADA, that's a programmable logic controller and the supervisory control and data acquisition. And in simple terms, that's just the computer system that runs the plant. All those systems that have to tie together to operate the plant. So the biggest concern is the construction delays. We need the capacity by the beginning of 2024. And then the secondary concern would be maintaining operation and meeting the permit during the course of construction.
Hey, Brian, real quick. Are they using MC Dean for the SCADA like the electrical contractor used them on the other project?
MC Dean for this, I do not know. I mean, we're going to be, I would have to check on that.
Really, that went really smooth, that part of it on that project.
The SCADA, right. You're talking about the integrator. I'm not exactly sure who their integrator will be for the contractor. I'm not really sure.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Is Hazen going to take responsibility for the membranes? Are they the ones that specified those and designed around those?
Yes, they did design around those, but then that responsibility for the operation of the membranes, if they're installed per the contract, would fall back to the contractor and the membrane supplier.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying they're going to review the shop drawings on it.
Oh,
they're going to
right.
do all that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
Thanks.
I have a question. Go back on the first part of that slide. It says continue coordinated discussions with Fairfax County and DC Water for temporary capacity. I
Yes.
understand DC Water. I don't understand how you're getting to Fairfax County.
Well,
with flow.
I can probably. So we have a kind of an agreement in place with Fairfax County for their purchase of 1 MGD capacity at Broad Run. And so they have not up to this point actually started utilizing that capacity. And part of the strategy could be to defer their utilization of that capacity until this work is complete. And maybe there would be some sort of negotiation for that. So that's one way to go. The other obvious one is DC Water, and to make use of some of the capacity that exists there. That, you know, they've sold essentially all of their capacity for long term, but then there's always the short term use. And also, if we're talking about dry weather flows, since we now have additional equalization, there's a little bit of headroom to negotiate with them on the capacity issues.
No, I understood DC Water. I
Right.
wasn't clear how Fairfax County got tied in.
Right. So it could be kind of that we lease back that one MGD that we sold to them as part of our strategy.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question.
Okay.
So let's just talk about MCD. Where does that fit into this project, and if there is any background context related to that? Because I didn't see MCD anywhere in writing here. So.
Okay. Mr. Sursakar, I can turn that over to Andy Kraft, because he just sent a text to me that we're not going to have MC Dean on this project. We're going to have a company, the eMerge is going to be handling that integrator, but he can speak to the technical part of that. So I'm going to let him speak. Andy?
Thank you, Brian. For the board members, I'm Andy Kraft. I'm the Director of Operations Technology for the company. So to address this question directly, MC Dean was our control system supplier for Trap Rock. They were actually also the original control system supplier for most of Broad Run when the plant was originally constructed. They are not the integrator. So for the Trap Rock project, it was the engineer, it was CDM Smith, because they had those services. For the expansion program at Broad Run, we're going to propose using eMerge as that systems integrator, as Hazen doesn't have those resources in-house.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Next time, please, if that is mentioned, that would be great, because I'm going to be very fair and transparent here and say that if MC Dean was involved in this project, then I would have to recuse myself. And I'm very and vocal about that. So that's just really important that we mentioned these companies in advance, so that I can talk about that later. That's fine, but it's just setting an example for future. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Brian, is eMerge in Hazen's price?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And then this is just a continuation of the risk register, and I just wanted to include this because we had some, we had a very few claims on the Potomac Water Supply Program for additional cost, and that's the result of keeping a lot of good records and having heavy engagement by the engineer and the program manager out in the field. And then the last one is about workmanship. Having the engineer involved as providing some additional inspections and additional eye on the project will also benefit us. In terms of the team structure, this is a traditional procurement. We're the owner. We have an engineer of record, that is Hazen, and then the contractor with Corman Kokosing. Each of those companies will have their own subcontractors and suppliers. The dashed line between the engineer and the contractor is a communications line. Each of their contracts mentions the other party, so they have a role in each other's contract, even though they don't have contracts directly with each other. So there's a communications line there. All the submittals, RFCs, those sorts of things will go from the contractor to the engineer. Okay, roles and responsibilities. I'm not going to read all of these bullets to you. In terms of our role as the owner is just really overall contract administration for both contracts, the engineers and the contractor. We need to ensure compliance for both. We'll be monitoring and reporting the status to you. And next year, I plan to start reporting status monthly to the CIP committee. Our role is to protect the investment and also to ensure operational compliance. So there's a heavy coordination role to make that happen. The engineers' responsibilities are listed there on the left. Submittal reviews obviously is a very big one here. Schedule reviews, we'll be getting reports from the engineer about the schedule. We do have a critical path schedule required for this project. And so every month we'll be getting a report about the critical path schedule. And we'll also be getting a claims digger report, so we'll understand the changes that the contractor has made to the schedule. meeting attendance, request for clarification, change management, and goes on down the list. Any questions on this slide? Okay, a little bit about the scope and fee development. We began talking to Hazen back in the fall about the project. And we also got some feedback from Greeley and Hanson. We met with Dale Kovacs and John McGettigan from Greeley about the Potomac Water Program, because we wanted to understand things that they felt went well, but also things that perhaps could have gone a little bit better. One of the things that they told us was that it's vital in how we integrate the Loudoun water inspectors, which we're going to have 2 inspectors on this project, how we integrate those inspectors into the project team and how they report. Our inspectors will be, for purposes of this project, reporting to the RPR who works for Hazen. For things outside of this contract that come up with standard company sort of things, company policy things would be obviously continue to report to their manager. But for purposes of this project, they will be reporting to the RPR. So the feedback we also got from Greeley was to ensure that we had simple and clear responsibilities for all the groups. Hazen began in March to develop a bottom-up estimate as they recorded the scope from us. We went back and forth a little bit on the negotiation to make sure that we're fully covered. Oh, that's the last one. And then we got the estimate back in April, quite a while before the bids were received. So are there any questions about this slide?
Brian?
Yes.
Jonathan, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, I have a question on what Angeline was talking about. I'd never really thought about that. Obviously, I'm in this business a lot. And how would we even know that people that we work with are subs to projects? So like, I'm going to be, if I was to vote on a contractor and I work with somebody else, how would I have to recuse myself, or do I think you told me before that I actually have to have a financial interest in the company or something like that. Could you just go through that to make me feel good and Angeline feel good? Because we're kind of in this business and I'm sure we have a lot of ties to these different companies.
Sure. The conflict of interest rules in Virginia come to bear when you have a personal financial interest in the contract. And that's defined in the legislation in terms of the scope. And I can't remember the percentages off the top of my head, but if you have, for example, a ownership interest in the company, whether it be the contractor or the subcontractor, that exceeds a certain minimum threshold, I think it might be 5%, but I'll have to go back and look at that. So in most cases, when you have either a business relationship with that subcontractor where you are doing business with them, but you don't have an ownership stake in that company in the form of owning shares or partnership interests, then there is no legal conflict of interest. There have been instances where board members just feel, because of their dependency on a particular company for their own business, that they wanted to recuse him or herself, which is certainly fine. But under Virginia law, it doesn't rise to a true conflict of interest, which requires disclosure and recusal until you have an actual personal financial interest in the contract through ownership of the contractor or subcontractor. Does that answer your question?
It does for me. So thank you so much. I'm glad I was able to bring this example, and thank you for sharing that and keeping us on the note.
And there was one sort of specific aspect of Chairman Koblos's question that I probably didn't answer, which is how will you know? Are you become aware of subcontractors that come onto a job? And we probably ought to work on that system a little bit better. We try to monitor using your annual financial disclosures, which indicate ownership interests in different companies. The possibility of conflicts that we could identify or flag for you. But let me talk with Carla about maybe some mechanisms where we can be a little bit more current in terms of identifying potential conflicts of interest with board members, and we'll get back to you on that.
Well, like I always say, there's always that Washington Post factor,
Sure.
I mean, Angeline, it's okay to recuse yourself. Even though it's remote, I've recused myself on a couple civil engineers that I work for. I mean, it's always okay to recuse.
Right, it is, and I would like to exercise that, judgment, just to be on the safe side, in many different, levels. So thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this slide?
I have one more question about the recusals. Jonathan, you were talking about financial interests. What about friendships, close associations?
Has no bearing on conflict of interest. Again, if you feel that your judgment, your discretion would be impaired because of some sort of a personal relationship, then it's certainly appropriate if you wish to recuse yourself from a particular procurement, but it's not required under Virginia law.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, I mentioned earlier that we developed, or the Hazen developed a bottom-up estimate, and we worked with them on that. So we've got every task broken down, and then we've got hours assigned or estimated for every position that would be involved in that. So it's broken down by roles and rates, and then provided by the against the scope.
So this is an hourly contract?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay. The contract is split into the 4 categories that you see here: basic and additional services. We have operational support services, and then the PLC SCADA programming services. That's all, again, the computer system that operates the plant. The basic services, those line items are shown there. The total for that is just a little over $6.3 million over the course of the project. Any questions? Okay. The additional services include the field inspections. We have one full-time inspector from Hazen that is going to be assigned to the project. He is presently working on the Horsepen sewer project now. He's doing the tunnel inspections, and I know that he came from Fairfax Water. Mr. Sultan, you may know him. His name's Cliff Dillon. You may know him. I know.
Yes,
Dale.
yes,
Okay.
I do know Cliff.
Okay. Yeah. So he's being assigned to the project. We also include some special inspections, which is a sort of a code requirement there with Loudoun County. We got materials testing, which includes concrete and soils testing, and then some pre-commissioning testing and startup, and then record drawing preparation. The total for the additional services is just under $3 million. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think just for everybody, for Marty and Angeline, and I asked Brian to put this together because this is, when you look at the percentage of the cost of CA services, these are really the not normal services that are added to this project. So it's almost 50, or I guess it's about 33% of the fee is additional services, which are not normal in a CA-CM contract.
Right. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, and then the last two categories are operations support services and the programming services, and those fees are given there as well. And I mentioned earlier that eMerge will be doing the programming for us. They're the integrator, PLC programmer, and they also handle the SCADA configuration. Their contract is a little over $1 million. They have to do quite a bit of patch programming during the course of the project as we're tying in to existing systems. They have to write programs to keep the system in operation while the system is being expanded itself, and then they have to install the final programming and to develop that configuration. So that's why that is the amount that is given there. I looked at the Trap Rock project. CDM did PLC programming and SCADA configuration on that project. And just as a comparison, their value for that work was about $1.5 million at Trap Rock. So that was to configure something anew. This is to tie into some existing. So there's a lot of forensic work that goes into figuring out what's there and then what's the most efficient way and effective way to tie that in. So that's a little over $1 million. Any questions? Okay, the total for the engineering services, the fee estimate is just under $11 million. As Mr. Koblis mentioned, this is a little bit higher percentage than we normally see at 14% of the low bid amount, which was $76 million. And the reason being is that it's such a complex project and they're doing so much work inside the existing plant. We just need, it's going to take more time on this project than you would expect with the greenfields. Any questions? I wanted to kind of compare this project as best as we can with what a greenfields construction project would look like. And so what I did is we took the construction cost from the original plant construction and we took out things like the admin building that are not changing, the laboratory, and we took out the solids facilities, took the best estimate that we could, and then we brought that forward, brought those forward to current dollars. And if we were to build a 5 million gallon per day, I'll call it a treatment train to the north, we would think it could be somewhere on the order of magnitude, say, of $140 million. That would be a much simpler project, and those services during construction perhaps would be 10%, and for a total project cost of $154 million. But this project, to get the 5 MGD expansion that we need, is $76 million in construction, but our services are a little bit more than you would expect with a greenfields project. But the total cost would be significantly lower than a new plant or a new treatment train built to the north of the property. So the retrofit total cost would be $87 million. Any questions on this? Okay, a little bit more about retrofit versus greenfield. We have some similar activities and tasks for both projects, but there's a greater intensity with the retrofit project than you would see for the greenfields project. And I've listed those there. Pre-commissioning, testing, and startup, all the tie-in work, shop drawing, reviews are definitely a little more intensified with the retrofit project. So as you read, I want to give you just a second to read through that and see if you have any questions. Any questions? Okay.
None for me. Thank you.
Okay. This is the as we scoped out the labor and understanding when we expected Hazen's workforce to be fully engaged on the site. There is a ramp up before they have the full contingency of people on the site, and that would include office people as well. So I've got this little multicolored chart to show how we anticipate Hazen and its subconsultants, how they will be coming onto the project and then off the project by quarter. Any questions?
Brian, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Thank you. Again, and I'm going to close up pretty quickly here on the retrofit versus the greenfield, but we have 105 separate process tie-ins on this project. For the greenfield project, we would expect maybe 10% of that. If we could go to the north, we could make 10 ties across from the existing plant, and it would be much simpler. We could actually just start the project up in its entirety at the end versus going through multiple startups sequences like we were going to do with the new equalization tank and the other milestones that Rick mentioned. Any questions? Okay. Just a shop drawing comparison with Trap Rock, because I know that has come into question before, and so I am presenting it here as a percentage of the construction cost. And for Trap Rock, we spent just under $4.7 million on submittal reviews for $133 million construction value, and that percentage was 3.5%. On the Broad Run, for our budget, we're at $2.2 million, and the review cost as a percent of Corman-Kokosing's bid is 2.9%. So we are a little bit lower than Trap Rock. Any questions? Okay, this is just a pie chart of the services by category. Basic, operational, additional, and the PLC and the SCADA programming to give you an idea of just how things are split by percent. Any questions? Okay, back in 2013, we presented some industry metrics that talked about the variability of the construction cost for basic services. And so this chart just shows basic and additional services, which are called construction phase services. It does not include the operational support or the programming services. So that would be roughly 6 to 11%, and I believe we are right at 12%, or just a little over 12% between basic and additional combined. And that's primarily because it's a retrofit project. Any questions? Okay, a little fee comparison with the Beaver Dam project, the interim biosolids, and then the two Trap Rock or the two Potomac water projects, the Trap Rock plant and the raw water intake and pump station. These are the fees, and I'll just highlight the $2.1 million is the fee that we paid to Gannett Fleming to inspect and to administer the construction at the reservoir. And then the interim biosolids was at 9%. We did not get full-time inspection for that project. Trap Rock, we did not get full-time inspection there either, but we had more of the services covered. We provided our own inspectors at Trap Rock, and I've got 11% plus for that one. And the reason I have 11% plus here and 24% plus here is because that does not include any cost from Greeley and Hansen, which was the program manager. We had a separate contract with Greeley for $13.5 million to provide other services related to the overall program management. Certainly some of those costs could be applied directly to Trap Rock or the raw water intake, but we didn't go through the exercise to try to prorate that in any fashion. So that just gives you an idea of where we fall within these other projects. Any questions? We are providing 2 full-time inspectors on the project. Hazen is providing 1 full-time inspector plus periodic discipline-specific inspections during the course of the work. And so there's some cost savings by providing some of the inspectors ourselves. Loudon Water, we are providing the project administration through Procore. We have a contract with Procore ourselves. On the Trap Rock the Potomac Water Project, this is something that Greeley covered in their work. They used eBuilder for administering the project. We're using, we've tried eBuilder and several others, EA Docs, Primavera Contract Manager, but we settled on Procore about 1.5 years ago and entered into a contract with them. And we use Procore for all of our construction projects now. So all the submittals will be done electronically, RFCs electronically. Only things that have to have a hard signature would come out, but then they would be stored into the system electronically. Any questions?
Yes, I do. This is Angeline. Wait, hang on. Okay, so when we provide our own inspectors, what I wanted to understand, just a background context here, what are some criteria that we put in place? Let me frame that again. When is it that we don't, so let me just put it this way. When is it that we don't, have our own inspectors? Because to me, I'm a very cost-oriented person. And so when we provide our own inspectors, the cost obviously lowers down.
Right.
But what are some projects or what are some cases where we don't, we require additional or external, inspectors?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm going to go back a slide. Well, you go the other way. For the Beaver Dam project, we don't have experience doing that type of construction. Our experience is in pump stations. We have some pump station experience and, of course, some linear work, water line and sewer. So we have some skills that in-house to do some inspection. But for Beaver Dam, we did not have the skill set to manage and oversee that sort of inspection effort that we did there. That was a $17 million job. And in looking at it, we just realized that was just not something we could do and protect our interests. So we felt it was in our best interest to actually contract that inspection to Gannett Fleming. We've also, on the Horsepen project, we have over 4,000 feet of tunnels that we're putting in on that project. And so the inspection of those tunnels is something that we don't have experience with. We've done a little bit of small jack and bore type work with small water line, but we're actually using a tunnel boring machine, or the contractor is on that project. And we felt like we could protect our interests best by contracting that element of the Horsepen project out to the consultant. Does that answer your question?
It does. So there's another layer added to this, and bear with me. So if we don't have that experience as per se our inspectors, and we leverage external inspectors to do that. Now I just want to understand the oversight of that. Who's overseeing this? That is getting adequately done. In this sense. So who's providing that oversight view, even though we don't have the skill set internally with our inspectors?
Okay. So, for this project, we do have some experience doing plant and vertical construction. So our inspectors will be reporting directly to the RPR that Hazen is providing. So it's really almost like a staff augmentation to their team for us. And so I'm not quite sure if I'm capturing the essence of your question, but our inspectors do have some experience in doing this type of work, so they will be reporting to Hazen. It's not that, if there's something in this project where we don't have the inspection, I mentioned discipline specific inspections, that would be some work that perhaps Hazen could come out and look at. We want a structural engineer out here periodically to look at the work as well, to provide another set of eyes on the project. So we're getting some of that, but it's on it's not on nearly a full-time basis. It's just periodically to come out and provide some observation. Does that answer your question?
I think, Brian, I want to just elaborate a little bit more on that and basically say that we still have a project manager on this project, and overall we are the owner, and we are going to maintain oversight of both the engineer and the contractor through our team. We are really looking at this as a partnership, though, and we will be partnering with Hazen in the way of contract in the inspections world. We will have some of our inspectors intermingled with their staff, as was described, and so it's not as though they don't communicate directly with their managers and our project team as much as they do with the Hazen team. So it really is more of an integrated approach. We maintain ultimate control through our project manager. There is an RPR who is essentially in charge of all of the inspectors on site. So they would all report their findings to the RPR, but that same information is reported to our project management staff. And then when we have to make decisions, there's a collaboration that occurs to come to final decisions. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, but that's kind of the way it works.
That does. That completely answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yeah, there was some loops in there, but you filled in. So thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and I did not mean to give the impression that we're turning over this project to the consultant either. I mean, we're the project owner, and so we're going to be very engaged through this project. But we saw an opportunity to leverage our inspectors to save some money here as well, and also by getting our people more involved, it gives us a better knowledge base too going forward.
Absolutely correct. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
And it's probably not clear through this that our operations staff is going to be engaged throughout this process. In fact, they're going to be very engaged because they're going to have folks working in their space doing this. And so we're going to leverage those opportunities for our operations staff to observe how things are being built, how things are being staged up, so that they now have a better understanding of the facilities that they'll be operating. So it's a great opportunity for that kind of cross training and understanding of what they're going to then be operating.
Given the nature of these projects, have you guys thought at all, or given any thought to a formal partnering process?
Partnering, we haven't been talking specifically about that. We'll discuss that with the contractor early in the process, though. Yes.
Because we use that to a great advantage at Fairfax.
Okay.
Especially given the amount of coordination that you have
right.
required on these projects,
right.
I would suggest looking at it.
Right. Yeah.
I am sure that's going to be there. We've done that on every project, every major project that we've had, from the original construction of Broad Run through the Trap Rock projects as well. So. Trap. So at any rate, yes, I'm sure that will be a component, but thank you for mentioning it.
Good, good.
Are there any other questions on this slide? Okay, with that, I have the recommended motion before you.
I make the motion.
I just want to make sure there's no other questions at all on this before we go to the motion. Okay, go ahead, Marty.
I do not have at this time.
I make the motion as written.
I second that.
Second, Ms. Sursakar, thank you.
I'm assuming this is going to go to action.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
At 10 million makes sense.
Roll call vote. Mr. Kobliss?
Aye.
Mr. Bonfils?
Aye.
Ms. Sursakar?
Aye.
Mr. Sultan?
Aye.
Unanimous, Mr. Kobliss.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Very good presentation. I just asked that when we go to for both you and Rick to only have about 1/4 of those slides. Obviously, this is very important, and I think we've vetted it out as much as possible. But I would just suggest that we, try to limit it to a half an hour for both projects to be talked about.
Okay. Thank you.
By the way, I just want to comment. I think they were excellent presentations.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is to talk about CMAR, which Savita will talk about. And Is this something we're voting on, or is this an information item?
So this is basically requesting approval of the resolution to allow the use of CMAR for the quarry project.
Okay, sounds good.
It's not informational, yes.
Okay.
Can you all see me? Hold on, let me turn my camera on real quick. Okay. So hi everybody, I'm Savita Schlesinger. I'm a senior project engineer in the Capital Design Group. I am going to be presenting today along with Chris Miller from Black & Veatch. So bear with us when we do a little switch over midway through the presentation. So as I mentioned, I'm requesting approval of a resolution to allow the use of construction management at risk for the Quarry A project. Whoops. Okay, so to orient you, this graphic shows all of the components of the Loudon water supply system from the raw water intake up here on the Potomac all the way down to Beaver Dam Reservoir. One of the last facilities that needs to be developed for inclusion into the system is the conversion of Quarry A into Milestone Reservoir. And Quarry A is located here at this blue dot, almost geographically in the center of our system. So the project was originally conceived as a design bid build project, and the design was advanced to a 60% level. This graphic shows the major components of the current design, which includes a deep shaft pump station located here with submersible pumps, 2 raw water transmission mains that help bring water into the quarry from the Potomac and then transmit water from the quarry down to trap rock, and then a tunnel under Goose Creek, which helps facilitate the connection of those raw water transmission mains to the overall system. And then the site is bordered by the W&OD trail, this green, I think it kind of hard to tell, but Goose Creek, and then also the private property around it. So it's a tight site to work within. After the 60% design was delivered in November of 2016, Loudon Water staff decided to take a step back and evaluate the best way to address some of the risks and challenges that were raised during the design, in particular related to the site construction and some of the safety aspects of the project. These discussions led to the conclusion that alternative project delivery would be the preferred way to address these risks. And in March of this year, Black & Veatch was brought on board to assist in determining which alternative delivery method would be best suited for this project. So why are we exploring alternative project delivery? I'm going to talk briefly about it, and then Chris is going to go into more detail on the different types of alternative delivery that we looked at for this project. But throughout the process of evaluating this, staff realized that being able to address some of the most significant challenges, including the risk, safety, and control cost, among some of the other ones listed here, alternative project delivery would be the best way to do this. Since this is one of the first tunneling projects of its kind for Loudon Water, being able to assign the risk to the folks that can best mitigate that risk is key. And along with that, being able to receive real-time constructability and safety input from a contractor during the design is a significant advantage that alternative delivery provides in comparison to design bid build. And that obviously can help us mitigate safety, control cost, and assign the risk in a better manner. In order to move forward with alternative project delivery, our procurement policy in accordance with the VPPA requires a number of things happen, including that the board identify adequate funding, receive advice from a professional advisor, and ensure that the project meets the criteria outlined on this slide, and then finally adopt a resolution approving the use of alternative delivery. So the funding has been identified. This project is part of our 10-year CIP, and funding has been allocated for this CIP year. And of course, we have Black & Veatch on board. So this is a high-level graphic, or this graphic shows at a high level the whole process in order to bring a CMAR or to go through alternative delivery procurement at Loudon Water. So we've done this first set of steps, and we have the project funding set, and we've brought on our professional advisor, and we're now here in the second set, seeking approval from the CIP committee and ultimately the board to be able to do alternative project delivery. If the board approves our resolution, then staff would go to the GMO in order to request approval from them, and if they approve the use of alternative delivery, will follow through the rest of these steps, which is a two-step process to bring a CMAR on board. So I'm going to pause real quick here for questions before I turn it over to Chris. Any questions on the previous information?
Yeah, Savita, I have one question. It's not really about this procurement process. I'm very familiar with this process and it's a great process, but can you go back to the slide that shows the quarry?
Sure.
Right, yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. So when we get quarry B, where do we tie in to whatever we're doing? Do we put in, I assume we're going to put in a new pump station, obviously, and do we tie back into this bypass vault, or do we tie further on down the line? Just out of curiosity.
I'm going to actually ask Sarah to answer that question. I'm relatively new to the project, so I haven't been involved in the discussions on the Quarry B side.
I didn't mean to trip you up. I was
no, that's okay. It's okay. I've only been focused on the design of the actual project right now, but I can get back to you if you want, if Sarah's not available to answer.
Yeah, no, I'm here. So the
Okay.
Quarry B is the quarry that's just south of the WNOD trail, and that's what Mark's referring to. That quarry is actually a lot deeper than Quarry A. So there's the tunnel that connects the two right now, which is what Luck used as their haul road to get the rock out of Quarry A. We're plugging that, but we're actually putting some pipes and capping them through that tunnel that could be used in the future for some form of connection. But the real details of that will ultimately have to be fleshed out, because Quarry B is actually being mined out in a few different sections. So there's some volume that will become available, what we've called the Quarry B sump. That volume will become available first before the entire quarry. So there's still some things to be worked out, but there's some provisions within this design that will give us some flexibility.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Again, Savita, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, I was just kind of curious. It came to me whether we have to put in a new vault or how that works, but it sounds like it's a ways in the future. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so I'm going to give a little intro on Chris. So Chris is a vice president in Black & Veatch's water division, and he's also the business line director for program and construction management in their heavy civil group. He has over 30 years of experience in the design and construction of tunnels and reservoirs, and is a known expert in the heavy civil field. So he's going to give the rest of the presentation. I did want to introduce Mike. He's not going to speak today, but you may see him at future board meetings, so I thought I'd just give him a little intro. Mike is going to be the project manager for Black & Veatch, and he is locally based in Maryland. He has 29 years of experience in the design and construction of water and wastewater facilities, and he's done a number of alternative delivery projects, in Virginia for clients such as Fairfax County. Okay, so Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, Savita. So as Savita indicated earlier in the presentation, Black & Veatch was brought on several months ago really to help Loudoun Water make good decisions on the delivery method for the quarry project based on the risks inherent with the work and other sets of key considerations. On a broad basis, we looked at and discussed 3 different delivery options for the project. The first we might refer to as traditional. This is a design bid build format, in which case Loudoun Water, as the owner of the project, would hold separate contracts for engineering and design with their engineer of record, and a separate contract for the construction. Characteristically, the construction contract would be awarded on the basis of the lowest responsive bid. So price is a significant component, obviously, of that selection and award to a contractor that builds the work. We also looked at design build, and design build comes in a couple of different formats. There's hard money design build, which was dismissed fairly quickly and early in our process from further consideration, which I can expand on later in the presentation, with respect to key benefits of what would be a progressive design build format. With progressive design build, the owner retains a single contract with a design build contractor for both the engineering design related service as well as the eventual construction of that work. They may also, depending on internal skill sets within their own organization, have a separate contract with a advisory firm or a technical advisor, if you want to think of it that way, that could support various aspects of the administration of that design build contract, as well as provide technical review and input to various work products that that design build contractor develops. The final delivery option that we considered and discussed is construction management at risk, or CMAR. In this particular model, the owner, as would be true for a design bid build format, retains separate contracts both with its designer and with the CMAR contractor that would manage and ultimately build the work. The key distinction between CMAR and design bid build would be that the CMAR contractor and the designer work on a collaborative basis with the owner to develop and finalize the design for construction. So with respect to, I'm not sure, did I skip a slide here? I think I maybe I did. I was thinking that the, yeah, I did. So with respect to design bid build, again, I'm assuming this is probably the delivery option that's most familiar to everyone on the phone. Most projects at Loudon Water are done with a design bid build delivery model. And, you know, the key benefit in some minds is that, you know, this might give you the lowest price for the work. It certainly gives you the lowest bid price, not necessarily the lowest price at the end of construction, which is reflected within the limitations that have been identified here. In design bid build, the relationships can be strained and at times adversarial. Depending on market conditions, you often have contractors who necessarily bid the work at below their expected cost. And they look to make that up, obviously, through claims and related change orders over the course of construction, which ultimately can significantly increase cost depending on the merits of those claims. There's also, from the negative perspective, potential for impacts to quality of the work as the contractor looks to reduce his cost. And as I've already mentioned, the relationships can be adversarial, and you're more likely to have conflict over geotechnical related issues, which are a significant risk on this particular project. Within the progressive design build framework, among the benefits, the key benefits here are that the selection of a progressive design build contractor is based substantially on their qualifications and experience. So you get good, solid resources with acute understanding of the work involved with developing the design and ultimately building the project. In this particular delivery format, since the contractor owns the engineering, there becomes a single point of contract relationship between the design builder and Loudon Water in this case, which transfers the risk of errors and omissions associated with design to that design build contractor. Within the specific purview of this particular project and where it's at among the limitations includes, Savita mentioned earlier in her presentation that the design with Arcadis as the engineer of record presently has progressed to a 60% level of design completion. So to go progressive design build, you'd lose a substantial amount of the investment that was made with Arcadis. Due to the need to redesign or otherwise complete the design, this would involve the longest time to bringing the quarry project online. And in this case, as pointed out earlier, the engineer does work for the contractor. And while it seeks to establish what would be a collaborative relationship between Loudon Water and the design build contractor, at the end of the day, that engineer reports to the contractor. So there's less opportunity in that format potentially for Loudon Water to influence and provide direct input to the design. With the construction management at risk delivery method, similar benefits in some respects to the progressive design build format in the sense that the selection of a CMAR contractor would be based substantially on their qualifications and experience. In this particular case, Arcadis would be retained as the designer to work with the CMAR contractor to complete that design, which would reduce schedule and increase efficiency in finalizing that design and getting packages broken out for construction. There's increased collaboration and innovation in this delivery format that you would not have with design bid build or necessarily with progressive design build. And it's the most likely to result in optimal design, balancing cost, long-term operation and maintenance considerations, safety and constructability. The most substantial limitations to CMAR in this particular case, working within the state of Virginia, is that the public contract law limits the self-performance to 10% of the contract. And there will be certainly some contractors in the marketplace due to an inability to self-perform more of the work who may see that as a limitation in necessarily competing for work on the quarry project with this delivery model. And as would be true, even with the progressive design build format, there is potential for lack of agreement on a guaranteed maximum price. The contract terms would provide for an off-ramp if that were the case, in which case the work could be delivered in a different manner.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
First of all, it looks like you're in my office. You have the same office background I have.
I'm on the other side of the office, though, Mr. Kovas. But yes, that's the only. Yes, go ahead.
I think it's important to point out that you have talked to many contractors already, and that there won't. It's not. Yes, there are people that won't, walk away because there's not more for them to do. But you have talked to many of the larger companies, and they are going to bid this project.
That is correct. We are doing working with Loudon Water on an aggressive contractor outreach program. There has been interest consequential to those. Basically, it's been phone calls at this particular point. We do intend later in the summer to bring contractor. It would be an online meeting at this point with the COVID restrictions, but to conduct an industry day to introduce interested contractors to the work and to discuss the schedule and
is now exiting.
I'm sorry, is everyone hearing me okay?
Yes, you're fine, Chris.
Okay, I wasn't sure what the message was, but in any case, as I was starting to say, that we are reaching out to the industry, making contractors well aware of the opportunity, and do intend to conduct an industry day in June. I believe is the schedule. Maybe it's July. I don't recall, Savita, what our targeted date is at the moment. But yeah, we're going to continue to make everyone aware and to inform them of the schedule and the procurement model that is approached or that is being recommended here today. So, any other questions? So if there's no other questions, then it is our recommendation as Loudon Water's professional advisor to move forward using a CMAR delivery model, construction management at risk. The benefits, the key benefits that we see and have discussed with staff from Loudon Water is that with this delivery method, you're able to maintain your investment in Arcadis as designer with that design at this particular time at a 60% level of design completion. We believe with the collaboration that results from a CMAR delivery model under, with the contractor and the designer and staff from Loudon Water, that it's the most effective way to collectively identify risk from the broad perspectives of a builder, an owner, an operator, and an engineer, and correspondingly to assign those risks to the entities that are best equipped to effectively manage those risks and reduce potential impacts to the project. Further to that point, bringing the CMAR contractor on allows us to thoroughly vet the design for key constructability issues and concerns, of which there are a number with this particular project due to general constraints within the site that provide for the ability of the contractor to stage his operations and to complete the work. And that too then provides an opportunity for Loudon Water really to fully understand with input from their designer and their builder what the impact of decisions is on the cost, the schedule, and the long-term need to operate and maintain these facilities. Overall, it just, from our point of view, provides a better opportunity to effectively manage risk and to control cost. And I believe that's, Savita, the last slide I have. I can advance to the next slide.
Yes, that's fine. I think the next slide is, okay, so just just to recap, I guess, Chris, can you go back one slide?
I just gave control back to you, Savita.
Okay, hang on just a second. Thank you, everybody, for being patient. Okay, just to kind of recap on our policy. So as I mentioned before, we have identified the funding that has been allocated as part of our CIP. Obviously, Black & Veatch has provided their recommendation for us, and we do meet these other criteria that are required as part of our policy. So the next step then is to just have a motion to oh, I don't have control of this. Chris, I think, can you go to the next slide, or Michael? There we go. Oh. So I just have a recommended motion for you.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Nope.
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, well, somebody want to make the motion for this resolution?
I make the motion.
I will second that, Angeline.
And I think we'll put it on consent, Jewel.
Okay. Roll call vote. Mr. Kobliss?
Aye.
Mr. Bonfils?
Aye.
Thursakar?
Aye.
Mr. Sultan?
Aye.
Unanimous, Mr. Kobliss.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Savita. And Chris. So, Tom, you have a capital spending slide? Hey, look at that. The
looks
red
like it's
line.
being brought up.
Great. I like it. All right. Any questions on this slide for Tom? All right, thank you, Tom.
You're welcome. Mark, as we wrap up the meeting, if I could just say thank you to all the presenters. We had a heavy lift today. It's been a lot of kind of work, obviously, with this COVID. Thank you to all the board members for your attention and for your support in the projects. Thanks to everybody.
Yes, and I know it was a long meeting for everybody, but it's been 3.5 months since our last CIP meeting. So we had I like that heavy lift. That's a great sentence there. There were some very important items that we discussed today, and I thank you so much for everybody's patience. Loudon Water, I think you did a fantastic job with this virtual format. And I know that on the when we have our board meeting, there'll be an added item. At least Mike Beardsley thinks that we'll be able to use the hand up feature that's on there. And what basically you'll just put your hand up to talk. So that'll show the presenter that he can break his conversation. Of course, thanks for Jim and Marty and Angeline for participating today. And if you have any suggestions, go ahead and email me to make it smoother next time, or to Carla or whoever. And also, I thank you to Keith and Sean. I think those were the only other 2 members that were on the line. If not, I can't really see everybody that's on the line. I think the presentations today were just fantastic. I think everybody, Kathleen and Rick and Brian and Savita and Chris, I think you guys did a great job, and it flowed very well, and it was very easy for us to ask and answer questions. Our next meeting is June 24th. Any other comments by our board members before I ask to close the meeting?
I have to agree. It was very excellent presentations.
So the one on June 24th, we're still doing Zoom, correct? The next meeting is also
That's our presumption at this time, but we will have to just keep monitoring the situation and the governor's executive orders.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if I have a motion to close.
So moved.
Somebody second?
I'll
second. Roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Kobliss,
Aye.
Mr. Bonfils,
Aye.
Ms. Sursakar,
Aye.
and Mr. Sultan.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn unanimous.
Everybody be safe.
Thank you all
Thank you,
very
too.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.